Hi, it's Katie Gorman. I'm just wanting to make this video to let you guys know there's a little bit of an update. After I talked about the Let Them Breathe court case and the judge's opinion on that, we went through and looked and saw that school districts do have the power regards especially to the testing and quarantine procedures. Now, we've had a lot of districts that have said that they will not implement the COVID-19 vaccine requirements in their school districts. Now, these are just resolutions. There's a difference between a binding resolution and a resolution. So it's basically them saying, we don't agree with this. A lot of them are saying on the premise that parents should have the choice and that one size does not fit all for all children. So that's really good. We've been making a lot of gains in that and getting a lot of school boards to come over to our side on these things. In the process, we've been having a lot of things happen. In Calaveras County right now, there was a school board meeting where I guess it would be the liability lawyers showed up and read a letter, a very threatening letter, which I'll go over that. And similar thing is happening here in Shasta County. So for Shasta County parents, on November 29th, this is a really big deal for us. And this is why we have now the agenda, as well as a whole bunch of other things to go over what's happening at that meeting. So let's dive right in and I will share my screen and we'll go over these things. Okay, so here we go. We have right here, it says, thank you for registering yourself in, and so they're basically saying one school board president/member can attend with you. This is to the superintendents, I believe. So this is a link to the agenda and giving them kind of a rundown of what they're supposed to be doing. And then there's a draft written by Bruce Ross stating that they basically want all the school districts to be on the same page about all of this stuff having to do with COVID-19. Of course, that is from our Shasta County Superintendent of Schools, Judy Flores. So it kind of gives you an idea of who wrote this and, you know, so basically where all this stuff is coming from. So this is the CDPH fact sheet, which is also attached to this. We'll go over that. That's the actual mandate. Kind of looks a little bit more like a press release, but at this point, that's kind of what it is. They also are gathering together some letters they're asking school boards if they sent out letters. So I'll link this in there so you guys can kind of go through all of this, but there's like a Q&A section with Tom Gaither for all other board members. Looks like this is set for December 13th so that they can ask these questions. So this is kind of what they're proposing here. They're proposing a, what would this be like? Kind of everybody is sign on to this thing where they're all on the same page is kind of what I think it is. They're talking about learning loss, extended quarantines. Students should not be forced out of the classroom and into independent study based solely on families' hesitance about a new vaccination. So it really seems like that one, they're really kind of on our side. That sounds kind of cool. Students of rural communities are substantially less likely to have been vaccinated for COVID-19. So a policy of requiring COVID-19 vaccinations to attend school exacerbates existing disparities between urban and rural schools. COVID-19 is a serious disease that poses real risk, including to school staff and families. but the health risks for children are dramatically lower than those for adults, especially for older adults. Decisions about vaccination requirements must be tailored to actual risk. So these, like, I agree with all this stuff. It's really great. Current state law allows personal belief exemptions. This is actually true. They're using this to try to get parents out of the fight because they think that, you know, as long as they can get an exemption, they're going to be totally fine. But ask Mercy Hospital employees about how that went for them. Not so well. So just would like to throw that out there to you, how we've gone down that road of really hoping for that personal belief exemption, and some people just didn't get it. So the personal belief exemption is not a loophole. It's a decision parents are empowered to make for their own children. The legislature should not tamper with the existing law that allows personal belief exemptions. But I will tell you, current state law right now states that the legislature can, in fact, take that personal belief exemption away and put that on the schedule without exemptions. That currently is a possibility that they can do that. And just to let you know, they do start up again there in Sacramento on January 4th, I believe that is. So keep an eye on what's going on in Sacramento. All right, so this is included in the package. Vaccine mandate questions. So in here, it talks about the timing of the vaccine mandate. Now, I think we are looking more to July 2022, but they're even looking possibly into January 2023, probably because, good job parents, school walkout probably did that. So, so masking the vaccine, when the vaccine is mandated, would masking continue or be removed as a requirement? Well, right now they make vaccinated people wear masks. Consequences. Now, this is where things get kind of interesting. Tom Gaither's memo talking about what happens to school boards for not following the mandate. So does this kind of start making you wonder if this is getting school districts to slow down on making any resolutions against the mandate, and also to tell them that if they're not going to go by the mandate, then they will have some consequences. So here they are. Under current law, pursuant to the Ed Code, a county office of education or school districts must exclude a student from attending school if the student is not properly immunized. There you have it. Health and safety code specify the immunization requirements / exemptions, and the student cannot be unconditionally admitted to elementary or secondary school unless prior to their first admission to that institution, the governing board determines that they have been fully immunized. So, so basically it's talking a lot about how school districts really are forced to exclude students who are not vaccinated based on that schedule. So that sort of gives you parents, you know, they just say, oh, you know, it'll be fine, no big deal, you know, go back to sleep, hush, hush, don't do anything about any of this stuff. We are on it. And then they turn around and say things like this. So this is why we really want you guys to stay on these things. So then they go on to talk about, this is some kind of money thread. I followed this link. It was talking about basically those requirements that they did to get those funding, the funds that have to do with SR 1, 2, and 3. I think specifically 3, but anyway, enrolling students. What will be the result when a school admits a student in violation of the vaccine mandate or relevant regulations? Under current law, what happens if a school admits / continues to serve a student in person that are statutorily prohibited from admitting, continuing to serve due to vaccination requirements not being met. You know, obviously they're really, really going to scare these board members and superintendents, really get to them. How will the mandate be enforced or monitored? So, you know, can we fly under the radar? They're going to say, oh, no, you can't fly under the radar. But they're saying, oh, it might be enforced through the auditing at the end of the year. And then you notice how that right here where it says current audit guidelines. So they're very much scaring people. So then it goes through the legislative process and talks about, so this was the thing I wanted to say. So talking about how basically if they do the bill, so a normal bill, unless it allows a longer on-ramp for some reason, takes in effect on January 1st of the following year. So not before 2023. Normally with this kind of thing, you'd then apply it to this new school year, but what is normal these days? So a bill can have an urgency clause and take effect the moment the governor signs it into law. But that requires a 2/3 vote in the legislature, a higher bar to clear. They have it. We live in California, guys. So it would be a little gimmicky, but the legislator could include the change as part of the budget, in which case it could take effect July 1st. Really, the only reason the legislator for the legislator to enact it would be to remove the public or personal belief exemption. That's what PBE stands for. So let's let this explain it here. On the other hand, they might well decide to wait on the FDA and CDBH process. When the legislature passed SB 277, that's basically the worst bill in history, forcing children, I believe I heard the number was somewhere around 50 to 80,000 children out of the schools based on their vaccination status already. So SB 277 a few years back and eliminated the personal belief exemption that applied to the 10 diseases that are listed on the statute: measles, mumps, pertussis, etc. The Department of Public Health also has the authority to add new requirements, taking into consideration the recommendations of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices of the United States Department of Health and Human Services and the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Family Physicians. However, in one nod to vaccine hesitant parents, SB 277 also said that when the department adds a new disease using that authority, personal belief exemptions must still be allowed. So since they're going the route of CDPH, that is why they're telling you personal belief exemptions will still be allowed. But in the press release, when Governor Newsom was up talking, he said his plan is to add it to the list of vaccines under SB 277. So through the legislature, which means that the personal belief exemption will actually not be, you won't be able to get one, so for your child. All right, so, and this, by the way, also applies to private schools. So some of the private schools have come out clearly stating that they will not follow the vaccine mandate, and also stated at the start of the school year that they would not follow the mask mandate. As a result, many of our private schools are full and looking to expand. And I think a lot of the school districts who love mandates are pretty upset about this because, you know, we're taking our kids out and putting them in private school. So they're demanding some accountability / monitoring of these public schools. Just ridiculous. What about them? They have to follow it too. All right, so independent study. So are the independent study students required to be vaccinated? And will schools be able to involuntarily transfer unvaccinated students to independent study? Interesting questions, parents. Why would they need to know that if they're just going to be handing out personal belief exemptions like candy? I don't know. Interesting one to kind of ponder over there. Staffing. So and then LEAs really is talking about school districts. So will school districts be able to involuntarily transfer unvaccinated staff to independent study? What do schools do when they do not have enough staff to keep the doors open, serve food, or provide transportation? They don't have an answer for this one. So my answer is keep on, don't comply. Don't do it. That's their biggest fear. Don't do it. Draw your line in the sand and just do not comply. The more that we have, the better. If a school has openings it cannot fill with permanent staff due to the vaccine requirement, could long-term substitutes be allowed to test weekly? So you're going to get rid of me because I'm not vaccinated, put in long-term sub, and they'd like to know if they can have an exemption and test weekly. This is horrible. These are actual things they're talking about. And they're really wanting to do this for not just teachers, across all jobs classifications. All right, so could a waiver be considered for schools where certain percentage of families are refusing vaccination? There you have it, folks. Do not comply. Your school districts might be able to get a waiver if you don't comply. Teachers, don't comply. Staff, don't comply. It sounds like it might be on the table. We push for that. ADA, oh, here we go. ADA is that money. They are always worried about that money. So for this year and potentially the next couple of years, it is possible to look at 3 or 4 years for the highest rate of attendance rather than just the most current 2 years. With the high rate of absenteeism due to quarantines, positive COVID cases, and walkouts, small school districts tend to be impacted significantly. So they're talking about asking for some other funding possibilities. So this is the link I followed to right now. This actually went to the wrong, I think that was a broken link. So here we go. School entitlement components. So for school districts, funded ADA is equal to the greater or current prior school year. So they're wondering if they can get maybe a different calculation for their funding based on what's happened this year. That's really, I mean, they're going to blame the walkouts, but really the truth is it's the quarantine procedures that are really messing things up, because the letter that was read on the board to the Board of Supervisors, I believe it was October 5th, it stated that 21,000 students had been quarantined in Shasta County. That was a letter from Judy Flores to the Board of Supervisors, read there. So frequency of vaccine, will this vaccine be similar to a flu vaccine, and will you be required to get one every year? When can we get out of the state of emergency? Yeah, this is good questions. Now this is where they have some of the county board supervisors there at the meeting going to talk about these things. Now the interesting pick that they did was Mary Rickard, which we all know, not on our side. She's the one that is going to be there to answer these lovely questions. She refuses to end the state of emergency, or at least just cast her vote to do so. Now, parents, this is what everybody's been up in arms about. This is attached to the agenda under the question section. And it's really it's kind of random and kind of doesn't make any sense for it to be put here unless you start wondering where their mindset is. Conservative school boards are reshaping US education. Push to dismantle how classes teach race, equity, and inclusion. So it's talking about how, it's a hit piece, 100% hit piece, talking about how conservative rural school districts are just basically racist, the worst thing in the world, and how people ran for the school board backed by national conservative organizations and just look to basically enfranchise all different types of people having to do with LGBTQ, disenfranchise, just talking about against how they're against BLM, nothing having to do with anything in those board minutes at all. It's also not at all what's going on here in Shasta County at all. So any of this stuff isn't happening. There's not a single bit of this having to do with Wisconsin, telling parent or students that they can't identify however they want, or different things like that, talking about somebody from Austin, Texas, saying that Black Lives Matter is Marxist, and things against CRT, and I'll link this in here, you guys. It's really long, and I have no idea. I have no idea why it's here. Why? You got to ask yourself this. Talking about Oregon. I don't understand. The school board in August banned employees from displaying pride or Black Lives Matter images or symbols on the grounds they could be considered political or quasi-political. Well, I'm sorry, but we teachers, we have always been taught, at least, the schools I went to, or, even just being involved in different things in academia, we have to teach our kids critical thinking. So no, it should not be biased one way or the other. I think that we all can agree that these kids need to make these decisions on their own and with their families, but it's not wrong for us to talk about controversial issues. It just needs to be balanced. So this just, why does this belong here? So you can just make your own decisions on that, because this, to me, I don't know, put it in the comments. What do you guys think? What the heck is this all about? Removing Black authors in Pennsylvania. Then it's talking about Republicans, and it's so long too. Look at how many pages. All right, so let's go into this. So I talked a little bit in the beginning about what happened in Calaveras County. So this Joint Powers Authority. So this is, I believe it's lawyers who work kind of on the legal side of public education, and they represent a lot of schools. They don't represent the small schools well because they don't pay as much. So they represent the big schools, and they want everybody to be in line. So what's going to happen is those small rural schools who are not going by the mandates are just suddenly going to have all this students in those big schools are no longer going to be relevant. So they're worried about that. They got to make sure everybody's in line. So they got to send out the fear. Here comes the fear. So this is crazy what it says here. It says that if they don't go by the laws, they can be fined up to $1,000. It says that the basically talking about the rule about how CDPH has the authority to add that in there, the required vaccination. So once adopted, the student vaccine mandate will have the full force of the effect of the law. So there's that $1,000 right there. So the other thing, willful failure to follow or enforce public health orders that have the effect of law could be misconduct outside of the liability protection. So they're telling them, you will not be protected by our law firm on your liability insurance anymore, and you will basically just be tossed to the side, and your school district could be sued for everything and then not have anything. So so that's a huge, so then they cite like how they feel like that's true. And then they're using words like could also. So it just, to me, sounds a little wishy-washy, but expose the district to civil liability and possibly personal liability to the individuals. So a lot of you were asking me where they got that information. It is from this letter that was sent out to a lot of school districts, but recently it was read aloud at a Calaveras County school, and I can't pronounce it, but it had a letter V in the beginning. So anyway, I dug this out of there. So school, this is what they've been telling us the whole time. Hey guys, if we go out on a limb on our, $85 a month stipend we get, we could possibly lose everything we have. So this is where they're getting that information, is this line here with the scare tactic here. This means the district and or individuals will have to pay for these damages themselves. Willful failure to comply with state law can subject schools and school officials to fines and civil enforcement action by local health officers. Anyway, this is where it also says this SR3 funds, which just, in the last month, school districts were talking about this because I've been to a lot of board meetings. Used for safe return for in-person instruction. So they basically just got this money, and they're talking about how they would have to, give that back, or maybe it would say that, so it says here, so if the district decides not to follow the order or a new requirement that adds the COVID-19 vaccine to the list of required immunizations to attend school in person, this may not be considered appropriate use of the funds. You see, we're going to take your money away. This alone could be devastating. Okay, there you go. More scare tactics. So failure to do so exposes the district and possibly individual board members to several potential consequences. So there you go. So they use a similar tactic on the following of the law to tell superintendents that they could lose their credentials. So that's where we're at. They're doubling down. They're coming at them basically just to force their compliance. So have any ideas about why that article was listed in there? Let me know in the comments. But please, please, please make sure that you get us letters, send us letters, schoolwalkout.org, email from there, the email link, some letters stating what you will do with your student if the vaccine mandate does go through. Show them that none of this matters if you don't have students. If we do not comply, none of this matters. and advocate for those teachers, write those personal letters and get them out to us. And if you can, we have 2 drop-off locations before the November 29th. That would be at Jones Fort or Dill's Deli for you to bring your shoes down there. You can also bring your letters if you do want them to be handwritten. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good night. Let's see.